Um, this is something that hasn't accurately been answered by any information that's available so far. Um, but it's a subject of BlackRock's Aladdin program and its artificial intelligence components, or the artificial intelligence that it uses to power up the Aladdin program. Um, First of all, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, isn't it, that it's called Aladdin? If you're not aware, the story of Aladdin is that he starts off as a thief. So there's that to consider. Even though it's probably just a joke. Um, um, it's not really, is it? The um, Based on a read of what they do, what BlackRock does with that, and it's very cursory, and it's not coming from the perspective of a stockbroker, for lack of a better word, or financial manager of any kind. But it's a rough guesstimate. Okay. It sounds like what BlackRock does is that it charges a fee to corporations to manage stock portfolios, um, and so but also buys into some of the stock in the portfolios and accepts a fee for different types of services when it comes to corporations managing their stock portfolios or whatever. Okay, and so that seems to mean that there's different types of companies, okay, and they have one of the things they do is they use an artificial intelligence to simulate. Some things that was say on their website, or the website was describing them. They seem to simulate because you're like, oh, this is under these market conditions. This is how that stock portfolio might perform. And so they have the capability of what's called maybe forecasting. They have the capability of running multiple portfolios simultaneously in their artificial intelligence program. And moreover, they might actually have part ownership of, based on what people say, of more than one company. And and not just more than one, they're saying lots and lots and lots of them. Like to the point where they're basically running a secret monopoly, basically. And so the main question is if they don't actually have, that BlackRock doesn't actually own those shares, and they're purely a for-service business, like a fee-for-service business, and the service that they're running is a piece of software that manages stock portfolios, then they might, how much automation is involved, and behind that, how much insider trading is going on, and at what point does a asset manager or stock portfolio manager management company become some form of intellectual assistance for stockbroking, and to go from that into straight up holding the stock exchange hostage. Based on the descriptions that people have provided of how many companies and just how big those companies are that BlackRock is said to be managing with its Aladdin software, it sounds like it's gone into both insider trading and holding stock markets hostage, or having the capability of doing so. So if you've got a specific algorithm or bit of code or something like that to try and figure out how that type of stock portfolio would operate, that one and that one, you're not going to have accurate statistics to give each portfolio unless all of them are compared to each other. Because in the real world, as a market, those different corporations are all operating in their respective markets. So there's something to that for that to even function at all. There's going to be something to that system, which means that they're going to have compare the different portfolios coming from the different clients or different corporations. And so that would mean ultimately that BlackRock would be in a position to provide forecasting simulations preferentially to different corporations here it suited them. That would qualify as insider trading. However, they might be qualified to provide a overall simulation or forecast. Simulation not being the same as a computer program where you think you're in the matrix or something. It's more like a mathematical calculation for prediction, basically. And they turn around and say, turn around and say, okay, thinking that turn around and says, oh, they're warning that the stock market probably going to crash as a consequence of tariffs and stuff like that. So, at what point have they provided their report to back up that statement? Like, who gets the piece of paper that says, oh, BlackRock has run a forecast by comparing all the respective portfolios and what the present market conditions suggest, and if you inject that particular variable, aka tariffs, that's likely to cause a crash. Okay, we have not seen any reports provided to anyone, just people's word as media release. And so what that sounds like, when they're not backing it up with evidence, given the context, that sounds like it's evidence of potentially holding the stock exchange hostage, and providing preferential media releases based on whatever's in BlackRock's interest. Okay, the assumption would be that whatever's in BlackRock's interest would also be in those corporations' interests, because if they go belly up, then so does BlackRock as a consequence of them having shares in that, or those companies wanting BlackRock to do a good job for them. So how much competition is there in that particular business model? How much room is there for insider trading? How much room is there for major players to hold markets hostage? So here there's an automation component, which they did say there is, where they set up their portfolio and they want it to behave a certain way. You go under these conditions you sell, under those conditions you buy, type of thing. And then the Aladdin software is automated, okay? So then they go, bang, okay? And that's when they sell and that's when they buy, okay? So when BlackRock provides recommendations to their clients, the corporations, are they doing it preferentially based on some kind of unseen political objective, or some unseen economic motive for BlackRock itself, or whatever is behind BlackRock? It's one thing to have stockbrokers to manage your portfolios. It's another thing to have a company managing just about every major corporation in the world, and at the drop of a hat, they could potentially hold the entire stock market hostage. Even worse still, when some of the companies in question have operations in Australia, such as Fox News, Sky News, Google, and so on and so forth. This is not a small time. This is not a small time thing. We're supposed to assume that if you keep going to the shops the same amount of time, and you spend the same amount of money, and you buy the same stuff, that every time you do that, the value to the company that you're buying the product from is supposed to be fairly stable, as if everyone does that, and unless there's like some really bad weather and the farms don't grow food or something like that, okay, or there's a war and one of the minerals from overseas can't be collected or whatever it is, and so what they're basically saying there is that they're not basing it necessarily. I mean, unless this is part of their algorithm, we haven't been told that. They don't seem to be necessarily basing it on consumer behaviour. They seem to be basing it on climate control of the stock exchange environment, and um, and and sort of treating it like essentially like a superordinate category that goes beyond the consumer and is at the corporate level. In which case, there's many different layers of changes to what happens to the money, and whether or not prices are going to go up and down, because you've got layers and layers of subsidiaries and franchises and whatever else before you get there. And those guys um, smell funny to people who don't understand finance, which is pretty much everyone. Because if you understood finance, you'd probably be the guy running BlackRock, wouldn't you? Anyway, but you're not, so you're poor. Okay, is your name Fink for a reason? I don't know. Isn't that American term for arsehole? Anyway, anyway, so this idea that idea doesn't sound like it's like it sounds like it runs too much risk of insider trading and holding stock markets hostage. So with the Donald Trump thing, okay, they've turned around and said, "Oh, the stock market crashed because Donald Trump was putting the tariffs on everyone." Okay, all right, yeah, it did a bit of a dip, did it? Okay, it didn't crash completely, but it definitely toppled for a while. And it's because the prices of things were going to change, and because there's too much fluctuation or whatever. The other countries got pissed off and said, "You're not having our stuff, we won't have yours," stuff like that. Okay, that would definitely cause a change. Okay, so those actual changes would cause a change to that. And yes, it probably would cause a dip. Because they'd been making less money than before, so boycotts will do that. So if you said that way, you go, okay, tariffs directly contributed to the dropping of the stock exchange in the USA. If you look at another way, controlled crashes, because when you're talking about something like that, okay, if he just announced it 2 weeks before, okay, the actual economic changes that can cause, the on-flow effects of the different countries doing boycotts or whatever, that's fairly immediate, but they might not come into effect. They might say, okay, the boycott comes into effect as of that date, because they need to have a date for all their corporations and businesses to become compliant, as well as their border patrols and stevedores and whatever else, shipping companies and whatever. Okay, need to have a date where compliance becomes possible, so they'll say, as at this date, the boycott comes into effect, type of thing. And so if you're talking about very, very soon after the announcement has been made, where there hasn't been enough time for compliance by said companies to come into effect, so it'll come into effect, on X date type of thing, but it might not have happened yet, then there's no reason to believe that that the boycott affected it, unless they're doing a forecasting thing and doing market reactionism. Now, the thing about the market reactionism thing is that that doesn't sound like something that you would program into a risk management system. Okay, if you had a risk management system, you would probably put programs or advisories in your programs, such as Aladdin, something to the effect of, in the event of boycott, if the boycott hasn't come into effect yet, hold steady, don't sell, don't drop. Just keep it as it is, because it hasn't come into effect. Hold your recommendations, okay, see what happens for a bit. So it wouldn't automatically drop. You wouldn't have people flying about. No, you'd hold it steady. You hold it steady until the dust settles and you figure out what's going on. Okay, hold prices steady until you figure out what to do. Okay, keep it stable, because that would be risk management. So if they haven't done that, then they weren't potentially, maybe just on basic logic alone, they don't seem to have managed risk. They've actually enabled a crash. Their advice system is ineffective. Now, for a company of that advance to potentially have a flaw in some of their worldview, potential flaw, we don't actually know, when it comes to risk management, suggests that maybe they're not actually doing risk management at all. It sounds like maybe what they're doing is control crashes. So they the stock market was politically engineered to have a drop to force Trump's hand away from the tariffs, so he could say, that was his FOMO moment. He's fuck around and find out. Better, they wanted him to find out before the boycotts actually came into effect, because they didn't want them to come into effect. So they went, push it down for a bit. Okay, Trump, FOFO. Okay, and that is actually an example of holding the stock exchange hostage right then and there. Now, someone turned around and said they reckon Trump was doing insider trading, maybe, because all those fellas probably know each other, and we suddenly backtracked on the tariffs. It's like, how much money did he make off it? Like, it sounds like it's engineered. Well, it does. Okay, we don't know if Trump personally made any money off it, but it's interesting that they talk about Trump doing that. And we know Trump's a billionaire, and the system they have in the USA at the moment is extremely corrupt. The Trump situation is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Okay. Nonetheless, it seems it seems almost like though, this is the making it obvious to the people moment. For certain types of demographics in the USA and around the world, we're a little bit more painfully aware of the fascistic tendencies of the United States of America before the American mainstream. They're still pissing in the wind as far as their political dichotomies are concerned. To be fair, Kamala Harris would be less evil than Donald Trump. The present tense to argue otherwise seems completely unreasonable, if not insane. Nonetheless, it would be correct to assume that in previous administrations, and not necessarily the Biden-Harris one, because we don't actually know, but in previous administrations, that hostage-taking behaviour of the stock market could have been behind other administrations' decisions as well. And in some cases, they may have also been given advance notice and benefited from it. So it might not be the first time that's happened. In that particular case, though, if they're making it obvious that they're doing that now, which they kind of are, if they've developed some kind of cryptocurrency on the side that's for them, and they're, you can start to see that they're trying to have almost like a alternate economy for their fascist ruling class, and they've been building up to it for some time with these different elements, and BlackRock most certainly seems to be part of that. So, what we're hoping from this is, and by the way, being an Australian, this one is allowed to incite this because BlackRock is an American corporation, not an Australian one. And also, it is not a legal jurisdictional authority, it is a corporation. Can Anonymous please hack Aladdin? Can Anonymous please hack Aladdin and do a generic leak on the insider trading activities going on there, and evidence of, if there's any, of controlled and deliberate market crashes and feigned recessions, okay, for the purposes involving collusion and corruption between government officials in the United States of America or other countries where those corporations also operate. Thank you.